Okay, welcome to session 10, part B. In this session, I want to talk about arbitrage and the book's notion about selling maple syrup, buying maple syrup in Vermont, selling it in New Jersey. And I want to try to make an argument why economists in general say arbitrage is good, even though usually lay people don't like arbitrage. They usually consider it bad. Now, there may be bad things about arbitrage. I'm going to ignore those for the most part in this. I want to concentrate on the good parts that lay people usually don't understand, and the good parts which economists usually do emphasize. Okay, so I'll get to that in a second. So here's the idea. So the book gives an example, and it says that suppose that in Vermont, that maple syrup is selling for $4. I think the unit was a pint, so $4 a pint. And meanwhile, in New Jersey, maple syrup is selling for $9 a pint. So there's a room for arbitrage. So what you can do is buy maple syrup in Vermont, transport it to New Jersey, buy it at 4, buy low, sell high, buy it at 4, sell it at 9. You can get a profit of $4 per bottle, assuming your transportation costs are near zero. So that's what we call arbitrage. So you have like this sure thing. You can buy at one price, sell at a higher price, and you can do it as much as you want, and you don't have to worry. There's no risk involved. We call that arbitrage. Okay. So first, let me explain why an economist would say that arbitrage is good. Okay. So here's the idea. Let's use a little bit of demand and supply curve analysis to say what would go on if you did that arbitrage, buy in Vermont, selling in New Jersey. First thing you do is that when you bought a bunch of pints of maple syrup in Vermont, so you're buying, so you are increasing the demand. You are shifting the demand curve outward. Okay, so this is a case. So when we say there's exogenous changes, including like population increases, so this is a case of an arbitrager coming into Vermont before he wasn't there, let's assume. And so that's a case of a shift in the demand curve, not a movement along the demand curve. So what we'd have is we have price, quantity, demand, supply, and then the new demand is going to look like that. It's going to shift out. Okay, so at any given price, more quantity is demanded, or at any quantity, the demanders are willing to pay a higher price. Okay. Before this point, the equilibrium price was $4 per pint, and the book, I think it says this, yeah. So, and let's say that once you, the arbitrager, have come in, you cause the demand to shift, which causes the price of maple syrup in Vermont to go up to $6 per pint. Okay. Let's think about this. So you've shifted the demand curve. Let's think about the supply curve. So the supply curve represents along the quantity axis. Okay, we always do this with a supply curve. We've ordered suppliers in terms of what they're willing to sell at. So here, these represent sellers who are willing to sell at a very low price. These sellers around here, these quantities represent sellers who are willing to sell at an intermediate price, and these are sellers who are willing to sell at a high price. Let's consider a seller who was not willing to sell before, but was willing to sell afterward. And I'm going to call her, let's suppose, her willingness to sell is $4.50. Okay. And let's call her is a person. Let's call her Anna. Okay, person A. So Anna is willing to sell a pint of maple syrup at $4.50. So before, when the market clearing price was at 4, she doesn't sell. Once you, the arbitrager, have come in, made the price go up to $6 an hour, all of a sudden Anna's willing to sell. Okay. Meanwhile, let's think about what happens in New Jersey. Okay. So in New Jersey, price, quantity, we have demand for maple syrup in New Jersey, and we have the original supply. And let's assume, as the book says, that the original, before arbitrage, the market clearing price for maple syrup in New Jersey. So, by the way, this is Vermont, and this is New Jersey. Okay. Before market clearing price is $9. Okay. You come in, the arbitrager, you add supply. Okay, when there's an exogenous shock like this, an outside shock, say a new manufacturer, new seller comes into the market, we say the supply curve shifts outward. So the new supply curve looks like this, and the book says, let's assume that at the new price, that after the arbitrager comes in, the new market clearing price is $7. Okay. Now, same thing. I said that for the suppliers here along the quantity axis, each quantity represents a different supplier. We also represent demanders on this quantity axis, and when we draw the demand curve, we order demanders in order of their demand. We put the highest demanders at this end, lowest demanders at this end. So the demanders at this end are the ones with up here who are willing to buy at a very high price. The ones here are the demanders who are willing to buy only at a very low price. These are the ones in between. Let's pick a particular person who was not willing to buy at the old price but is willing to buy at the new price, and let's call him Bill. And in particular, let's assume that Bill is willing to buy. He lives in New Jersey, and he's willing to buy at $8.50. Okay, so the important part is $8.50 is below 9. So when the price was at 9, he says that's too expensive. It's only worth $8.50 to me. I'm not going to buy. But now that the price is 7, I am willing to buy. Okay. So here's what happens when because of you, the arbitrager, you've come in, bought all this Vermont maple syrup. You've made Anna enter the market. Before she wasn't selling, now she is. You buy from Anna. So you buy at $6. So Anna's going to make a profit, okay, of before she's willing to sell for $4.50. It's like she gets a profit of $1.50 for that pint of maple syrup. And then you go to take that to New Jersey, and one of the people you sell to who wasn't willing to buy before is Bill, and Bill buys at 7. So Bill gets, it's like a profit. We call it a consumer surplus, and I think we'll talk about it more, define that more precisely in a later chapter. But Bill's consumer surplus is $1.50. It's worth $8.50 to him. He only has to pay 7. The difference is $1.50. So all of a sudden, we've this new seller, a new buyer. There's also an arbitrager. It's as if we have facilitated an exchange between Anna and Bill. In fact, we have made an exchange. It's just that you, the arbitrager, were the middle person. Okay, now, I told you in an earlier session, if you're an economist, You want to cry if there's a potential exchange that doesn't get made. And that's what's going on here. There was Anna and Bill. Anna's willing to sell at 450. Bill is willing to buy at 850. If they knew each other, they would sell. Anna would sell a pint of maple syrup to Bill, but they don't know each other. That's the idea behind this example. It takes an arbitrager to facilitate that exchange. So what happens, there's a potential exchange, potential gains from exchange, and the potential, the value from potential exchange equals 850 minus 450. So when you, the arbitrager, enter this market, just from those two people alone, that's $4, you have created $4 in value. Okay. Now it turns out, of that $4, Anna's going to get $1.50 of it. Bill, in this case, gets $1.50 of it, and you get the remainder. You would make a dollar profit from selling the difference between the equilibrium prices. Yeah, because the new price in New Jersey 7, the new price in Vermont is 6. Your profit's 7 minus 6, or $1. Okay, so that is one point of this example, is that arbitrage is good. It creates value. Okay, now the second point I want to make is how economists, definitely the typical economic textbook. Now your textbook's a little bit different. In fact, at least one of the authors, my buddy Pete Boettke, calls himself an Austrian economist. That's a special school of economics that tends to emphasize, looks at markets in a more dynamic sense. What happens when they're not in equilibrium, that's beyond the scope of this course, but there's a little difference in emphasis and attitude toward economics. So, but a typical economics textbook would give, would say something, would call this something like a law in economics, and this is that arbitrage opportunities cannot exist in equilibrium. If this were really the case, that the price of maple syrup was much higher in New Jersey than it was in Vermont, and the transportation costs were really very low, then what would happen, even if that could exist very quickly, that arbitrage opportunity would go away, because arbitragers would come in and be like you, buying Vermont, selling New Jersey, and very quickly the price would go to, so it's the same in Vermont and New Jersey, or at least very, very close to being the same, where the difference might be the travel costs. So in a typical economics textbook, a typical economist would say that in equilibrium, there can't be arbitrage opportunities. Okay, they go away too fast. Okay, if they exist, they will exist for a very short time. They're gone in a flash. Okay, so that attitude is so prevalent, and maybe it's wrong, but because of that, there's a joke among. This is my second or third joke about economists, and the way the joke goes is that an economist and his buddy are walking down a sidewalk, and all of a sudden the buddy says, "Hey, there's a $20 bill back there. We just passed a $20 bill that was lying on the sidewalk." And the economist says, "No, it couldn't exist. In equilibrium, someone would have already picked it up." Okay, so, okay, that's we're making fun of economists. Surely, what we say happens in equilibrium can't really happen all the time, and the writers of your textbook are more like the buddy. They're saying, no, really there are these opportunities, and economists don't focus on them as much as they should. And they said that's the role of an entrepreneur, to find those arbitrage opportunities. Okay, so that's the point. And then the final, your economics textbook says, look, maybe there are these arbitrage opportunities, what I'm going to talk about in a second. There are these opportunities for economic profit. And the reason we should get these are opportunities for arbitrage, one reason is because of errors in human judgment. Okay, a lot of these economic models make all the actors perfect and perfectly knowledgeable and perfectly rational thinking, where they may not be the case in actuality. And the second is innovation. We could have things that people just haven't thought of, new technology inventions. Because of those things, sometimes we will get an arbitrage opportunity. And what I'm going to talk about in the next part, which is very similar to an arbitrage opportunity, a case where we actually have economic profits being above zero. So the typical economists will say economic profits have to go to zero, just like the arbitrage opportunities. I'll explain that more in part C. Finally, the authors of your textbook, they give a third reason, imitation. I don't quite agree with them. I don't see that as important as the other two, if you like. But if it's on an exam, the key is errors and innovation. And actually, I think innovation is the most important part to explain why there can be arbitrage or cases for economic profit. Okay, I'll explain that more in part C. See you there.